What's up? Oh yeah, I can hear myself.
You got yourself?
I think so.
Mic check, mic check. You turn my monitors up a little bit. You loud and clear?
Yeah, I can hear myself.
All right. It's such a groove. I understand the issues, but it's such a groove, and I've been wanting to talk to you about it for a while. But we can talk about that later in any case. We can bring that up later on. It's not primarily why you're here, but it's something that's on my mind.
Wait, what? The
issue with Steve Miller. I love Steve Miller.
Oh, I gotta give some backstory. I love Steve Miller's music too, but he said some unkind things about the Grateful Dead.
And it's the no-no.
After Jerry died, and he was very happy to open for them on an early 90s tour.
So he's a backstabber.
Even jam with them a little bit.
Right.
He did this interview where he was just like, oh yeah, those guys always sucked. Like, they're so boring.
Right. After Jerry wasn't around to be able to call him on it.
Yeah, and Bob Weir's not going to jump into the mix. So
yeah,
my point is just everybody's allowed to have opinions. You don't like this or that. We gotta. That's what we do. But you're not going to catch me opening up for a legendary band and then later saying they suck.
It's a hell of a groove.
That's my moral compass.
It's good. You were raised well. I'm proud.
Yeah.
I'm proud of your family for raising such a strong, upstanding young man. Thank you for adding value to humanity.
Thank you.
It's a great thing. Thank you for this groove.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm not sure you were tapped in, but we were busting some sweet hip-hop covers over this before.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of talk about you potentially doing Fire in the Booth on Charlie Sloth's show. Are you familiar with this conversation that's being had right now in the halls of Beats1?
No, nobody told me about this.
Yeah, I'm saying I think there might be a moment for you to, I don't know if you have like rhymes in the canon and you're ready to explode, but I think that there's an opening for you on Charlie Sloth. You want to jump in on that?
I'm down. This sounds great, Luke.
So he does. And by the way, if you want to screw it a little bit.
Okay. Well, when I was doing that guitar part, I thought it sounded like a siren. When you do that, it's like the really sounds like Born Identity, like the European cops just
maybe
going
if it was
by.
like a comedy. Maybe it was like maybe it was like Keystone Cops done the European version, but it's not particularly sinister. I'm not listening to this thing of Jason Bourne's about to flip a mini. About to flip a mini in Russia.
This was originally written for the next Bourne movie. They rejected it.
Someone's got to rip that. Someone's got to take some of that footage and because he always looks so frantic. Like obviously he's being chased and his life's a nightmare now, and everyone's trying to kill him all the time.
Right.
I mean, there isn't a second that guy's not he's not about to be assassinated.
It's stressful.
Stressful life being Jason Bourne. You know what I mean? We've seen it over 5 films. But I don't hear this in the next one. No, I get it. It's got the European siren vibe to it. It definitely has a hip hop thing to it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's hip hop in this music. And we joked about this because, a little bit, because does it freak you out hearing it at a different pitch, having spent so much time working it?
No, I like it because now we've been rehearsing it a lot. So in the practice room, we're always like trying it a little different.
Things.
Yeah.
What's cool is that if you let this go for long enough, and then you put it back to its original version, you'll think it sounds stupid. Watch.
Right. Oh yeah, now it's like high pitched. It just was like reverse puberty.
It's like changing the whole aesthetic of the song. It's good, man. Thanks for rolling by. It's good to see you on this rainy day. Do you like rainy LA days?
Oh, I love it.
Me too.
I miss the East Coast so much. So to get a little gray and rain, it doesn't upset me.
We've got heaps to get through, man, and I always really enjoy kicking it with you and talking about your music and just sort of talking about life, and the conversation will flow and it will find itself. But let's just focus right now on the music on Sunflower because we've got you and we played it an hour ago. This song was Steve Lacy, so you've unveiled a collaborator in real time, Steve on this song. What did he contribute to the song Sunflower, Ezra?
We worked on a lot of stuff together. On this song, it's cool. Like, we're singing in unison, and I mean, the part that just really took it to the next, because I already had this riff, and then he just started singing along with the riff, so it happens halfway through, da-ba-da-ba-da, ba-ba-da-ba-da, and I love the part at the end when it slows down.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So just having his vocals on it was crazy, and especially his harmonies. Like, there's a few songs on this record where Steve just does these, like, really beautiful harmonies, and he's the type of dude who... like a 3 or 4 part harmony that he just sits there. He's the type of dude just like, give me a track, sitting there with a mic, another, and he just builds it and it moves and stuff.
Yeah.
But Yeah, he's on other songs on the album too, and he and I have started all sorts of stuff that will come out at some point.
Other things that aren't Vampire Weekend, just creative.
Well, it's a little hard to say because I first met Steve. I actually got to check with him. I can't remember. It's got to be at least 2 years ago, maybe more like 3 years ago. And he just tweeted at me. And he was just like, hit me up. And I didn't know who it was. I'd heard of the internet, but I didn't put it together.
But so he couldn't have hit you on the DM?
No, it wasn't even a DM.
Following him.
It wasn't even a DM.
He just
tweeted at me. And it was right when I was starting to think about the next album. And I was like, yeah, I should open it up more and work with different people. And he was like,
but you hadn't even heard of him at this point. So how did you even know?
Well, because then I realized I'd heard of the internet.
Right.
I just hadn't heard the name Steve Lacy yet.
Got it.
And then I meet him. He actually, I was like, do you have a studio or something? And he was like, yeah, sure, meet me at this place. And it turned out to be Sid from the internet's house. And we just went in their basement.
So you took a little leap of faith and it worked out because you could have got there and it could have been some janky computer and some guy just like, the worst hour.
No, he turned out to be great. And then I met him and he told me the first song he learned on guitar was A-Punk.
Right. Have you heard that a lot? Because that is pretty iconic. I mean,
and pretty easy.
It is pretty easy, but also but by the way, so a lot of AC/DC records, people, it's still legendary and classic. That's why people learn them first.
You got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And also, I want to get past the kind of like the challenge level of A-Punk and get more to the fun level. It's a fun song to play.
Yeah, I think so.
Like the energy of it draws you to the guitar as opposed to something which requires classical picking. Nobody wants to start there.
Right, and I've always had a real naivete when it comes to guitar. Like, I took like my classical, I can play Bach on the piano and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're underselling, man. I mean, these are not easy riffs. They sound easy, but this is like, how's that sounding in rehearsal?
It's pretty good, but in rehearsal I got other people I can play with. There's a lot. Well, I love to play the song actually, but there's other songs where I'm very happy not to play the challenging part.
Right.
Like I did it once in the studio. I don't need to sweat it every night.
Ezra, thanks for coming in. We got you for the whole hour right here, and we have 2 brand new songs you can add to the 2 already in existence. And Father of the Bride, the album title is out there, and you're just teasing us with this information at perfect pace. And this is called Sunflower featuring Steve Lacy. Did you, like, when you finish a song like that, I mean, and you just sort of sit there and go, all right, that's as good as I can get it. Can you stay in that frame of mind, like listening to it now with me in the room, knowing it's out there and stuff? Are you like, yeah, man, I didn't hear anything out of place?
No, I thought that sounded great.
It's really good.
No, and I'm very uptight sometimes, but I was like, you know what? That sounded good. Well, that was one of the last songs that I wrote for the album, and I just kind of felt like I wanted another, like, short guitar one.
Something funky.
Yeah, something kind of fun.
It doesn't surprise me that a lot of the record was obviously done because that sounds like a pressure off song.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was just like kind of noodling and I was just kind of messing around like in Mixolydian and I kind of started playing this and I liked the riff. And then, yeah, it was like, because it's like a short song too. It didn't put any pressure to be like, well, we got to add one more part or whatever. It's simple.
It's kind of often the way when I speak to artist friends of mine or people about their music is that, once you get the bulk of something done and you feel like you kind of a certain amount of the pressure that you place on yourself is off and you've got the body of a record, that you do find yourself in a place where the fun stuff starts to come out. And then they end up kind of showing their faces earlier than the record anyway because it's the newer stuff. You're like, I want people to hear this. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then even when you finish the whole record, I always have this big instinct like, I want to go to the studio more.
Yeah.
I just want to start working on new stuff too.
I'm amazed more musicians, don't like anyone kind of leaves to some degree because it is such a beautiful experience waking up, having a cup of coffee. And I'm just setting your day up for you now. You tell me it's different. And I know that you're a new father, obviously.
No, I start with a cup of
coffee, right? And then you get in the car and you roll to the studio and you sort of hang out with your friends. You're making music. You're going to make music with a dick. So you're making music with your friends and you're hanging out and then something just happens and then it's like 9 p.m. and you're like, we kind of got something and it's great. Like, why would I stop doing that?
No, totally. And I love the atmosphere that we have in the studio. And it's always been that way, that whether it's the early days, like in a dorm room, just in front of a computer, or even now, the vast majority of this album was at R.L. Rekshad's studio, which is, and he works at a few places, but I always like to work at the home studio.
Which is smaller?
It's smaller and it's literally a house.
Yeah.
So, there's like a front yard and stuff. And there's some things I enjoy, the finer things in life, not studios. When I go to an expensive studio, it's like I feel like the weird energy.
It's cold too. I mean, look, no disrespect, and there are some great studios in LA. And for those people who aren't living in LA, this is really a town where studios still thrive, or at least
there's still classics. Yeah, New York, they all closed. Most of them,
London, a lot of them have been closing here and there. You know, it's tough. Studio life is tough because we're all portable now. Everyone's portable. Everyone makes stuff on the go. So no disrespect to the legendary studios that occupy places here in Los Angeles, but I've always felt the same way. Like, you want to go somewhere where there's a kettle in the kitchen and there's life and there's toast in the pantry, and it's like you can have that in a studio, but it's like who bought that?
Right, and I guess it depends what you're doing, because we'll always go do studio time when we want to really like mic the drums correctly and really try some, using some like really nice equipment. That'll always serve a purpose. But so much of studio time is also just like literally sitting around and listening to new music and saying, "Do you like that? Yeah. Do you like that? No." Just playing, hanging out, like joking around.
Yeah.
And that I don't like to do. When you're paying so much money, it just...
I had one of those kind of classic way off the ball moments, and you probably won't remember this, but we were at a highfalutin Hollywood shindig. I think it might have been like a post-Oscars thing, maybe a year ago. Yeah. That's right, yeah. We found ourselves in the same place, and you were kind of just getting started, I think, or perhaps that was the perception, was you were getting started. Yeah. And I said to you, I feel like you're going to go more down the kind of hold up vibe, and it's going to become, because I just felt like, you and the guys coming back together, a different dynamic, perhaps more of an electronic type environment. You were like, it's kind of the opposite, actually. We're sort of going way more freewheeling, and it's more organic.
Yeah, well, and look, when you hear the whole record, it's 18 tracks, so there's definitely a lot of vibes, hopefully unified, but a lot of ideas. But yeah, it's funny, because that Beyonce song, Hold Up, originally when I made that demo, with Diplo, I thought that'd be a Vampire Weekend song, and there's like an alternate universe where it could have been. But one thing I just kept coming back to is, and this happens a lot, like when you're on your fourth album, it's 2019, anybody can do anything, kind of, at least sonically, and there is something comforting about just like kind of going back to this, the same instrument I got when I was 13 years old, the guitar. And
it's also what is unique about us in some regard. Like, what's unique is that you have friends of yours that you play music with in a chemistry type environment, right? It's not just like, let's go to a computer and use the same trap packs, the same packs. Everyone else,
full disclosure, a lot of times it's a DI guitar into the computer, more or less. So it's a little bit of both. But yeah, no, I'm always like noodling. And I think there's also a part of me, like I said, I've always considered myself like a very naive, not very good guitarist. So it is kind of like also fun just to, I've always got like an unplugged electric guitar at home, just like running scales now.
Right.
Because like I'm kind of like, I just want to be better at guitar. It's like a little challenge.
I always think that the unplugged electric guitar is one of the saddest sounds, because it's dying to be amplified, and the fact it's not, it's always upset. I think the guitar is a little bit sad because it just sounds so underwhelming.
I know. I've thought about it now, especially because like, ooh, this would sound better on, I got to get an acoustic. But I've always been into the fact to not have a lot of instruments in the home.
Why?
I don't know. I think I like the limitation, and I like to have that kind of that feeling that I'm not actually a professional musician.
Yeah.
Like everybody has their weird origin myths.
I understand the whole. There's a few things you've said in the past to me about like, I'm not a professional musician, I'm not a great guitar player, I'm not this, and I wonder, like, this feels more like a psychological hurdle than it does an actual technical one.
No, I think I'm good at some stuff, songwriting and coming up with ideas. No, I'm just on a very basic level. I am worse at guitar than most of my peers. I'm not trying to be down on myself. I'm just saying it's something that I try to get better at. Whatever, just the piano always, I've been able to just shred a little more. And so, it's something to work on. And I've also just felt like, a lot of people have said this in probably more eloquent ways, but, when you start as a musician, one way or another, you start super amateur, whether, in our case, messing around in a college dorm, or somebody who just gets like a cracked version of Fruity Loops, which I believe is like the Soulja Boy origin story. Like, he's just messing around on Fruity Loops and he makes a #1 hit when he's a teenager. And so then you have this link in your head between creativity and, amateurishness, and you kind of don't want to lose that. So
it's a bit of a sweet spot.
So like, I like when I'm at home to kind of have the same environment when I was a kid or something. Like there's a few musical instruments lying around,
yeah,
and I can just grab it and think about it, but not like
this is what I naturally lean towards because of my professional ability and what I've learned over the last 20 years.
Yeah, just like, all like super fancy guitars on the wall and like the gold records and stuff. There's just something nice about like, oh yeah, right, music, Because you need to think about other stuff too.
The really short, sweet, but quite sad song, that one. It's called Big Blue by Vampire Weekend from an album which is now called Father of the Bride. And, 1 minute, 46 seconds, you say a lot in that song.
Yeah, I kind of say the same thing over and over again. We were right on the, Ariel and I debated that a bunch because it's technically 4 verses.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think you could switch it up in the 2 through 4, and I really thought about it and I tried, but then I was like, what, this one's like, it's like a simple meditation, and the music changes so much.
It does.
The music kind of tells the story, and the vocals stay the same. And also I got to shout out our co-producer on that song, DJ Dahi.
Oh, nice.
It's cool because this batch of songs is the first time anybody's heard anything we did with Steve. It's also the first Vampire Weekend feature, and then this is the first of anything we ever did with DJ Dahi. So. And
who else kind of helped you and Ariel put the whole thing together?
The whole album? I mean, there's songs I did with Rostam. There's Blood Pop. It has some really sick contributions.
Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, and we'll get back and we'll go through the lists of individually. Right. Let's rewind actually. So we can't sort of gloss over the Rostam collaboration because obviously, it's the first time Vampire Weekend have returned without Rostam as a core member of the lineup, or at least on paper.
Right, sure.
But he's in the studio collaborating with you, and you guys were always super open that it was never an acrimonious split. So how did that feel with him back working with you, but knowing that it wasn't necessarily part of the core chemistry or dynamic of the band? It was more of a free experience.
It's just not that different in a way. It's very familiar, and because it's not just with the two of us, it's not just like, oh yeah, that was like a dude I met of like a Craigslist ad for looking to start a band. Then we got successful for a few years. That's somebody that I met my freshman year of college. We worked on music before we had a band. He was this dude who was like really interested in recording. I remember. When we were freshmen, I'd already written the song Bryn, which ended up being on the first Vampire Weekend album. And, and again, like freshman year of college was the time I probably didn't pick up a guitar that much because busy doing other stuff, And then I meet this dude who's super enthusiastic about music too. And he's like, why don't we record that in my room? And I was like, we could record this in your room? And because he had a mic and, at least some bass, like an M-Box basic Pro Tools setup.
Yeah.
And then so the first time we did anything together, that relationship was just as two musicians, a songwriter and a producer, two creatives together. It wasn't like so we started a band 3 years later or something. So I always think about it like we didn't literally grow up together. We met each other when we were 18, but
formative years though.
Yeah, we kind of like grew up together as creative people and rubbed off on each other, and we've had like conversations where we kind of realized we were each other's like first fans, in a way, like him supporting me and what I do, me supporting him and what he does. So
if it's not that different, then if you get together and you're in an experience where you can collaborate, how many songs do you think he worked on this record out of 18?
Just a couple.
Okay, so if you're in a studio and it doesn't feel that different and the chemistry is still cool, the friendship is still intact, you still support each other, you still love each other as people. I guess the obvious question, if I'm just going to be a sort of journo about it, is why doesn't he just? Here's what I'm trying to say. If you're going to leave a band like Vampire Weekend at the end of a long run of touring and albums, you guys had really pushed it, right?
Yeah.
It was like we all need to take a break. And someone decided, well, more than take a break, I think I kind of need to just leave the band. And it's like, all right, cool. That's cool. You leave the band,
right?
But then you take like, how many years has it been since the last album? This one.
6
years. So you can leave the band for 6 years and then you can decide, well, that was a great 6 years. I achieved a lot of things. I put out a lot of solo records. I lived a life. I've got, relationships now. Life is great. It's not like you guys went out and made 4 albums without me and I'm like, I didn't want that life. I could have that life again. Why don't I just come back and make more music with the band?
Yeah, but there's like a funny thing. It always, maybe because we had this pre-existing friendship and musical relationship before the band, I don't know, I could imagine from the outside world, it's a little bit like, well, these guys have this band and then somebody leaves. Whereas there was always something like, there's always something that felt temporary about it. I think there was always a slight feeling that that this was my band.
Got it.
And that I had this amazing collaborator, far more than just, you know, a keyboardist, you know, like a true collaborator. We wrote lots of songs together, formatively came up with a lot of the ideas together. So, but even then there was always this idea, you know, that the project of being in a band is very all consuming. And so there was always kind of a sense that it was kind of gonna end up this way. And because, I don't know, just the way we looked at it, you got to understand too, it's like Vampire Weekend in a lot of ways didn't start in a rehearsal room. It started in a studio, a dorm room studio, but it started with that type of relationship. And so over the years, we had a lot of conversations about like, well, what does our relationship look like? And
are we actually a band in the technical sense of the term?
Right. Yeah. And we were questioning that from day one. So in some ways, it wasn't like this big dramatic thing. It was kind of like, yeah, that sounds about right.
How we always mapped it out.
Yeah, and so, you know, the idea that maybe in the future we'll do a project, or whether it's called Vampire Weekend or whatever, where we do all sorts of stuff. You know, you're talking about people who've known each other for a decade and a half, who over the years have thrown out a million different ideas of things we could do together. So it's a little bit hard to explain, but
it's actually not, because what you've done, if I may step in for a second, is you've actually put a ribbon on it. It's like, stop thinking of us. We were never the band you sort of thought of us as. It was kind of like, that was then and this is now, and you want to make music as Vampire Weekend, it takes the shape it takes.
Well, yeah, and I want to be sensitive to like the version of the band that people maybe are attached to. It's just when I do interviews and people ask me about like in the studio and creatively, then I have to be honest and say like, well, it's just not that different. In a way. Well, but one thing I'll say is, you know, Rostam's a very unique person. When he brings me a piece of music, or I bring him a song, because we've started stuff in a lot of different ways, it's going to end up in a very Ezra and Rostam place. And it's not just me, it's not just him. We have a combo. We've done enough work together. There's something about us. And with Ariel, it's going to be different too. So, you know, I think about like, you know, a song like Sunflower. I totally could imagine bring that riff in. I can like picture, there's a version me and Rostam did that would have gone to a different place. But I've been very lucky in the sense that, and I'll tell you what would have been a nightmare is to kind of adjust the relationship with one of my primary collaborators and then just be alone.
Yeah.
That's when I probably would have been like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go to grad school. This is too confusing. But I'm lucky that there's a handful of people in the world that I really have like a deep connection with. They speak the same language, come up with cool stuff. They make me better, you know, that kind of stuff. Rostam's one of them, Ariel's another. And you know, I'm starting to feel that way about other people, like, you know, the Dahis and Steves of the world. So, you know, that's also why maybe the record took a little more time, is that when I had time by myself, I don't like to go just like, you know, horse around on the piano by myself. To me, music is and that's why I also don't want to be like, oh, like Vampire Week, you know, I've never had any issue with the concept of a band, because I actually think everything is a band. That's one of my pet theories. Is that late in the past few years, it became very unfashionable to like bands became played out, because whatever, you know, maybe it was about time. And so then there became this idea like, well, everything's about like solo artists and the individual. And my feeling was like, yeah, but don't get it twisted. Behind the vast majority of solo artists, not all of them, but the vast majority
is a band.
There's a crew of people. When you look through Kanye records, you'll see all sorts of names come and go through the eras, and then you'll see a few that are there the whole time because they have this creative community. And you know, maybe it's not presented as a band, but there are people who shape the sound of his records in significant ways. Nobody more than him, but in significant ways. And then you kind of like go back and you look through some of the other classic like solo artists of history, and you kind of realize often there's like 2 to 4 people who are like the core creative team. So, yeah, no matter what, that's what I enjoy doing. And the hard part is just to find the right people, because you just can't force it when it's not the right people.
I sort of feel like what you're saying in a really nice way, and I really appreciate this as a fan, is that Vampire Weekend is a band, and your friends are in the band, you know?
Right.
And Ariel's in the band. Right now, Steve's in the band. I think Rostam's in the band. I think he's in the band. I just think he's in
well,
the
there's
band.
always
He's in the band. I mean, he's on the album. He's in the band.
Yeah,
it's a big band.
He produced this. I mean, yeah, that's what I like. I like the idea that
he's in the band.
Anybody.
His name's my Oscar. All right, so there you go.
That song still sounds good.
It sounds really good. And at the end,
speaking of Rostam, he made those drums. Those are some of my favorite sounding drums we've ever had.
I was about to say, it's got kind of almost like a power metal vibe at the end. You guys are really going for it. I mean, for something that is so...
It gets big.
Yeah, it gets really big. And the thing is, I think people always thought of Vampire Weekend when you first came out as this kind of studied, thoughtful kind of band. And yet there's some power in that. And I went back and listened to that debut album the other day, and there's some really powerful sounds and production going on there.
Oh, yeah. And like in the early days, too, live, just like blasting through like Walcott and A-Punk and all this stuff. Like, yeah, the energy's always been a big part of it, especially when we were young.
So we've got you back, Vampire Weekend. It's official. The album, it's a great title as well, Father of the Bride. When did you come up with that, and what is the sort of?
It was very early on.
Yeah.
I always do better when I know the album title. Same thing with Modern Vampires. Same thing with Contra. Mm-hmm. First album doesn't really have a name, but it was very early on, and I'm already thinking about themes and ideas and vibes, and then I can't remember I can't say for sure. I think I just kind of happened to see that the movie was on TV and it just like clicked. I was like, Father of the Bride, that's it. I love that name. And then of course, I have to like test it on a few people. What do you think? Because a lot of, even like Modern Vampires of the City, where you just say that with no context, some people are like, okay.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Father of the Bride. But
I actually think Father of the Bride, can I just be honest?
Yeah.
If I was going to rank it, I would say it's my favorite album title you guys have done.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's like immediately you can totally picture what that feels like for you as an individual. Like everyone's got a concept of what Father of the Bride means.
Yeah.
Because it's just this kind of crazy, bittersweet, confused moment of like,
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, even if you're not thinking about weddings or marriage, it literally is just a confused, bittersweet moment.
It really is. So, okay, we have this record. I mean, I suppose the obvious question, because I'm one of the first people that's had a chance to ask it, I guess, is did it feel like 6 years for you? Were there moments where it dragged and you wished you could have sped the process up, or did it happen when it happened and there's no regrets?
The 6 years went by incredibly quickly. And even as I think about what the next few years are going to look like, I have to remind myself, if I don't go to the studio more often and stuff, like I'll literally be in my 40s the next time the album comes out, and I'm just like, that doesn't seem quite right. So I know time just passes very quickly these days, and after like a really intense 5-6 years of the first 3 albums, you chill out and it just, the time vanishes. What was the question?
No, you answered it. We went from collaborators. I rewound back to Rostam, and then you were going to pick up where you left off. I can't remember who was number 2. Was it?
Oh, I was talking about DJ Dahi.
Yeah, that's right.
Dahi, because the Big Blue started with a beat that we made together.
Mm-hmm. What did you love about Dahi? Why did you invite him, or how did you get to know him? What's the vibe?
I actually can't remember. I think somebody was just like, you guys would probably like each other, and I loved his production. I mostly heard his production in like hip hop, like Drake, Worst Behavior. That's probably the thing I was the most familiar with.
Yeah. Which is the maddest beat.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy beat.
It's the craziest beat. There's so much going on. It's like the kitchen sink is in there for sure.
But as somebody who loves rap, but is also very aware of the fact that, that's not what I do. I was, it's like, it's cool. Yeah. All right, here we go. Debut.
We're gonna get it on. We're gonna get it done.
But so you go in, you're like, well, that's amazing, and then you're like, but what would it sound like if we worked together? Because just me over the Worst Behavior beat might sound good on paper to some people, but it wouldn't be good.
No.
But then I get to know Dahi, and first of all, like any good producer, he's certainly not defined by any one genre or one beat that he made. So we just like really got along, and we just like spent a lot of time just talking and hanging out and making different beats. And we made a whole bunch of beats that I'm still not sure will work for Vampire Weekend, but I love everything we've done together. So it'll find a life somewhere.
That's awesome.
And then this time I was, I'd had the kind of piano keyboard melody dun 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 thing, and he added a few like kind of drum sounds, and we kind of left that for a long time. And then I had some ideas for what the song would sound like, and then eventually Ariel and I finished it, and then we kind of had like the big acoustic guitars and the slide guitar, and then it kind of all came together. But there's something I really like about that too, is like kind of starting something with a producer and then kind of taking it back and finishing it. But then there's other contributions from Dahi, and he's somebody that I think we'll be working with long into the future.
It sounds pretty collaborative. I mean, who else could, I mean, are there any other sort of vocal collaborators or anyone else who shows up on the record?
Yeah, but we still got a ways to go, so I'm still keeping that quiet. Because it's funny, like with 18 songs, you know, by the time, now people have heard 4 songs. We had
You've
2.
learned a lot in the last 6 years. You've been listening to the restrained rollout of the teenage hip hop star. You're literally just like, yeah, you know, I'm going to wait. I'm going to drop that in 3 weeks.
Well, you know, sometimes I question it because some people are like, oh my God, it's taking forever. Especially, you know, when you could always drop an album overnight if you wanted to.
Sure.
But I kind of feel like we've been gone a long time. And it's important to me that with an 18-song album, the way I think of it is that now people have heard 4 songs. There'll be another 2 next month, and then the record. And then you still got 12.
You got 12 songs.
So that's like a full album to wrap your head around.
It's like deluxe in reverse. It's like you're hitting us with the deluxe play.
That's right.
And then you're giving us the album play second.
Yeah. And truly, I'd like to think with Vampire Weekend fans, they know like every song we make serves a purpose. It's important on the record. So, you know, I know in like the streaming era, some people are like, well, you know, the 18 songs, you know.
But what does the streaming era mean to Vampire Weekend? And do you consider it? Is it something that you thought about in the lead up to the release of this record? Because in between the last album and this album, I've moved countries. I work it out.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's changed a lot.
Personally, a lot has changed, and the whole industry's changed.
I think the streaming era ultimately doesn't mean that much for us. I'm glad that we came out when we did. But you know, to me, it's just like a new mechanism. I know, knowing a lot of people in the music industry and a lot of musicians, that the metric side of it can drive people crazy because, you know, back in the day, you might look at your SoundScan every now and then and be like, oh, you sold, you know, 30 records in the Indianapolis area last week or something. Oh, interesting. And you just like get that and it would come and go versus the metrics of, you know, digital streaming platforms.
Yeah.
You could look at every single song and think, where did they stream that? How many streams did it get? And you could compare yourself to, like, remember at the end of the year, your competitors, Spotify, they were sending everybody this is your year in review. And you saw a lot of people triumphantly posting that. And then I know musicians of all different genres and statures. And people were like, oh, thank you to the 5 billion, 7 billion people, almost everybody on earth listened to me. And then you saw other people being like, this shit is giving me anxiety. This is depressing. I don't like this. So anyway, that's one side of the streaming era. It's just like more numbers.
Numbers.
And I guess everybody could relate. Anybody who's got an Instagram can relate to that.
It's the perfect distribution model for the social media age.
Yeah.
Because like, who would have thought? When we were growing up, okay, let me put myself in the same room as everybody else for a second, and let's look to another room and say, when our parents were growing up, or even our older brothers or sisters were growing up, who'd have thought the math would be the #1 metric for rock and roll?
Oh, right. It used to be the anti-math.
It was anti-math. We got into rock and roll because we didn't want to do math.
Right.
Now it's like the driving force for all success is stats.
That's right. A lot of people looking at their streaming numbers.
A lot of people looking at the stats right now.
Calculating checks in their head all day, every day.
I'll be talking to young rappers. I'll be like, how's the world right now? How's your game? And they're like, my stats are off the chart right now.
We live in a stats world. But that said, I will say so anyway, that's one side that specifically, and maybe that's just like
I love it when you so anyway me. It's one of my favorite things you do.
I do say that a lot. But any professional musician, look, whether you're looking at Apple Music and Spotify now or back in the day, SoundScan, I guess no matter what, you can obsess about numbers if you want to. But I will say that just as a fan, I love streaming. I love making like weird little 2-3 song playlists.
Just 2 or 3 songs?
Well, yeah, because I was actually having this conversation with Ariel.
Just called an EP?
I was in the studio with Ariel last night, actually, and we were just kind of talking about, you know, looking at some of our leftovers, you know, what could be cool for the future. And I was like looking at this one playlist that I had where I had this one piece. It was a classical piece by Ravel, and then there was a kind of a minor New York disco hit. And I was just looking through it and I was like, why did I put this in the same playlist? And then we took the time to talk about it. What do these two pieces have in common? And does that give me some artistic way forward?
See, I make playlists like that too.
Yeah.
I do. I like to I start with a little Thomas Newman
and
then it will sort of merge into some kind of like little known alt country thing. and by the end of it, it's just straight Slayer. So I like the idea of like somehow,
No, it's streaming provides so much.
I think we also, because we come from a mixtape culture, we like to start our tapes with something that's got an ambient. We like intros. We like intros.
Right.
We like intros.
Yeah.
Right. Can we agree on that?
Something a little instrumental.
Something that sort of sets the mood so that the second piece of music has like a bit of a drop to it.
Oh yeah, when putting together an album, track 1 and track 2, very important.
Very important. What is track 1 on the album? Have you decided what that is yet?
Oh yeah, I knew what track 1 was for 2.5, 3 years.
Have we heard it yet?
No.
You haven't heard it?
It was important to me. I want people to hear it when the album comes out.
Yeah, of course. I love that you still think like that.
You got it. And also, at the end of the day, that's another thing I'll say about streaming is that because at the end of the day, streaming is just an amazing way for everybody to hear music.
Yeah.
Then there's this like kind of business metric side of it that people get freaked out about. But people have made the case that streaming makes albums irrelevant, right? That's something that people say.
It's absolute nonsense.
And here's the thing. Vampire Weekend came out in another time of tumult when everybody was like, oh my God, everybody just downloaded MP3s off blogs. I've already heard, I'm not that old. I'm only in my 30s. And I've heard multiple times people talk about the death of the album.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've always realized is,
say it.
If in fact the album is dying, we're still an album band. It's like if you're, poetry hasn't been a major art form the way it was in the 19th century. And it's like, but if you're
a poet,
you're Derek Walcott or something, you got to be a poet.
So this is exactly what I keep saying to people. It drives me crazy. I'm like, yeah, playlists are great. I make them all the time. I made 3 on the weekend.
Right.
If I'm an artist, I want to make an album because I want to make 18 songs. I want to put 6 out, put 12 out. I want there to be a song number 1.
Right.
I want to create something that has a structure that means something to me, the artist. So therefore, all pundits, and I can name 6 people I know who are mates of mine. Well, 4 are mates of mine and 2 I don't really like. Who I've had recent conversations with about the album but dying. And I'm like, you're completely missing the point. If the artist wants to make the album lives. That's it.
Right.
Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you want to make 60 minutes worth of music and put it out because that's your complete thought, that's it. It's done.
Like, it seemed like a pretty played out art form to the average person.
What was that?
The Broadway musical. That seemed, that didn't seem as culturally, of course there was always cool stuff happening, but that didn't seem as culturally relevant as it had in the, the first part of the 20th century.
Correct.
I mean, what if you told little Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Exactly.
Man, that's pretty, the Broadway musicals are not as culturally relevant as you think. You should probably work in tech. Then he would have gotten some nightmare job, He would have been really depressed. He would have been having to make all sorts of weird unethical decisions.
Yep.
And instead he made his musical and millions of people love it. So it's like, people just compare themselves to the wrong stuff.
We wouldn't have had the masterpiece that is, 1776.
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, that's my...
He's got to be himself.
He's incredible. He's remarkable. And do I like a lot of Broadway musicals? No, it's not really my bag. I haven't been to many. Hamilton was a rare moment for me where I reflected and respected. But it's still relevant. It still matters.
And honestly, and even if you don't like Hamilton, it doesn't matter because he made what he wanted to make and it resonated with people. And yeah, so again, it's like the art form, just when you think and also at the end of the day, it's more dignified to just be yourself at a lower level than to cravenly try to chase a trend at a higher level. Right? I mean, we all know this, but we still make mistakes. So,
do you have a favorite Broadway musical?
Oh yeah, West Side Story.
Yeah,
that was just the household favorite. My mom always liked it, and it's just like it's real like muso, and it's beautiful, and like I always love the what's it called? Somewhere There's a Place for Us. That and I love. I've gone deep on that. That's based on a Beethoven piece. Bum ba na na na. Apparently, there's gonna be a new movie.
Oh, they're going to redo it. Wow. I mean, it's in keeping with the current trend.
Well, and the old movie is just sick, too.
It's ridiculous. And it's kind of really sad and quite dark.
Yeah. No, I've always had a weird feeling. I'm not also trying to come out here and say, I'm probably one of the people who contribute to the idea that musicals felt like a dead art form because, when I was like you know, a tween and I was getting interested in punk and hip hop. I wasn't very interested in musicals, but when you really look back at some of that stuff, you're like, that's a crazy art form.
No, I mean, I've always wondered whether or not, because you are a rap fan, and by the way, you definitely know and understand and appreciate great rap music. I mean, we've had some pretty deep conversations, and I know that you've got great taste in that genre. I wonder whether or not, if it's something you could ever collaborate in or work in or dive into, or whether you just like being a fan of that music. Two-part question, and also who you're effing with right now, who you really like right now, like who's moving it for you right now. It's a two-part question.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I was just thinking how I just remembered there's a guy named Nolan B. Roland that my friend Despot put me on to, that people might, aka the Bean Man, and he's got like a super cool voice, does his own production, and actually there's a version somewhere that he did like him rapping over the Big Blue beat, which I love.
Really?
Yeah. And I actually forgot about that until right now. So I'm like, oh yeah, we got to put that out at some point.
Yeah.
So I love Nolan B. Roland. It's just like, it's deep, it's weird, it's highly original. But you to keep it real, like I think similar to you, I was interested in rapping at times in my life. And I think I just got to a place where I had this feeling like it makes more sense for me to be a fan for a lot of reasons, and I also think it's interesting to with anything to feel can you take inspiration from something but really do it in your own way. And I do feel like that I could give you a million reasons why certain Vampire Weekend stuff is influenced by hip hop, but I almost like it to be like a very subtle thing, I guess.
It has almost like an old kind of like 1992, 93 Loud Records type vibe to it.
Yeah, actually, when you like loop it, I was like, oh, there's just like a little bit of, I could like Cypress Hill, there's like a...
Well, it's a very... yeah. It's got like a little brand new beat. A little brand new beat before. I had a beat and sling a note as if my name was David Ruffin. Quick to toast an MC just like an English muffin. Don't worry about it. You're right. It's got a little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
No, somebody could rap over it.
Then I take a muffin and I max. I went into the opportune time and then I tax. Oh, should I lax? I get the
Yeah, we should get some like 90s.
You should do like a backpack mixtape.
Get some 90s classic people on it.
Father of the Bride. You could call it Grandfather of the Bride and just be like a little flip it up.
Yeah.
Are you excited about, I have to ask you because it's everywhere right now. How do you feel about Bernie right now and going around again? Because you were so vocal and supportive of Bernie early on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean...
Are you ready? Are you ready for the call?
It's funny. I didn't get a call from the campaign. I got those like weird texts you get when you give money to campaigns and people like...
So you're just on like a list?
Yeah, you get weird texts from like Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke, and you're like, is this real? And then you get like, and it just seems like a robo text, and then you get like a follow-up just like, hey, listen, we really, it's like, whoa, is this actually a human being? Of course I love Bernie.
And you got the text from Bernie's camp?
Yeah, just like anybody who's ever contributed.
But then you got the follow-up text from Bernie's camp, like you're more than just, you're off the robo list.
No, I'm just somebody who
you're on the robo list.
Some money.
But you're not on the robo list. You're a vocal supporter. You win and on the ground.
There's another relationship there. I mean, I think like a lot of people, the infighting and see everything that's going on with the Democratic Party even now with the stuff with the Representative Omar talking about Israel and stuff. It's like the fighting just drives me crazy. So I have to like kind of dip out a little bit to not get too caught up in that stuff. So of course I love Bernie. Like I do think there's very little not to like. And I think that's true of a bunch of the other candidates too. So I do kind of feel like, Bernie's my guy, but because there's so many Democrats running now, I know Elizabeth Warren is cool. She seems like an ethical person. I gotta like do some research before you before you just kind of but again,
but you've done the research on Bernie. That's why I'm asking.
No, that's why
like do you pick up the baton and run again? Because it's like, look, I love those Time Crisis episodes because it was early on when you were working with us.
Yeah.
And so
we went to Iowa.
Yeah, and you were you were really kind of bringing an informed and interesting political view, which never felt like it was overly partisan. Not obviously I'm on your side of thinking, but I'm saying for anyone who wouldn't be, it was well thought out and it was a process, and I really enjoyed that. And then of course he didn't get nominated, and it was what it was. So now he's going in again, and I watched a bit of his speech the other day when he was very impassioned and talking about where he's from and how we won't forget that. And I thought of you, and I thought who do I know that has been a big supporter of Bernie, because Bernie resonated within the artistic community? Who do I know? There's a couple of people I know, including yourself, and I thought, I wonder how they feel about this. And I knew I had to ask.
I'm totally glad that he's running. Of course, the most important thing is just that we have an ethical person out there to beat Trump. And also, it's not just about president, too. That's another thing that I also feel, as much as I love Bernie, and of course, he should run. He's one of the front runners. He should run, and hopefully he'll win. But there's also that feeling, it's like, oh, God, why do we obsess so much about
one job,
who's going to be president when we came so close to flipping a red Senate seat in Texas?
Yeah.
And is he going to just is all that work that going to vanish, and we'll be left with two Republicans in Texas and and just some weird self-defeating primary? So yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings about the whole thing, but I don't have mixed feelings about Bernie at all. I hope he wins, and if he doesn't win, I hope it's somebody else who has similar views. And again, whether Bernie wins the primary or not, even the fact that he is noted by her as an inspiration for AOC already, that's an accomplishment. That all this stuff is bigger than any one person. She I saw some old tweet of hers. It was probably before she won, but Ocasio-Cortez had a tweet where she described herself as Cardi plus Bernie. So she's out there doing amazing things and being a very new voice and shaking things up in a great way. And so, you got to show respect to her heritage. So Cardi and Bernie.
Cardi and Bernie it is.
Cardi and Bernie, they're very important people.
You have more members of the band now than ever before. You enjoying that experience? I'm hearing reports.
I think Cardi and Bernie are members of the band.
Cardi and Bernie, they are. The band is extended. You offered me a position in the band before, but like I said, I appreciate that. But but I sort of feel like, I do think your name has to be attached to some form of creative within the band dynamic. Otherwise, you really are just grasping for straws. But I'm always available. And next time you decide to go back in, not in 6 years, but some point sooner than that, I'm always open for a little bong, I got a little percussion.
No, making this album was super fun because I think
that was embarrassing. I just invited myself.
Oh no, but I think we figured out how we can have a lot of people contribute ideas.
That was embarrassing.
And look, at the end of the day, it still kind of has to zip back to me and Ariel to making final decisions.
Whoa. So hang on, is Ariel now in the band?
No, Ariel's not in the band.
Is he?
Is he part of the creative team of the band? Sure.
But
and also, on the live side,
you just said it's got to zip back to me and Ariel.
Well, when we're finishing the record,
got it.
Oh, Ariel's my guy. But then even on the live side, it's fun too, because even think about Big Blue.
What about the guys in the actual band who are out there playing in the band?
No. That's why I want to shout them out too, because obviously live.
There's 12 of them.
There's me, Chris, and Chris.
Yeah.
The OGs of the band, and now we got. Oh, happy birthday to CT, by the way.
Is it today?
Yes, today.
Happy birthday, CT.
But now also we're touring with Garrett, Greta, Will, and Brian. And, so a lot of these songs are very short, as you may have noticed.
Well, not now. I hear there's 8-minute versions of Oxford comma going on.
Oh, yeah, maybe one day. But it's, that takes some thought too, because, contrary to popular belief, we're not actually a jam band, so it's not we're just
you've gone a long way towards establishing that, though. I mean, but, you can turn tail on that now.
But even then, it's Big Blue's I forget how long, a minute 50 or something.
Minute 47.
And we're kind of that's just not fun to play that short live. So we're kind of in the practice room. We're what could we do with this live? And
screaming for an extended acoustic version.
And Brian wrote this kind of original melody guitar part as a way to extend it, and it's I love it. And it's this whole other people hear that when we go play some shows pretty soon.
Would you do a live album?
I'd consider it. I love the idea of doing a live album, and I think we've got so much energy for what we're going to do live this year. Also, we just have a songbook, which I love. We can finally mix it up night to night. And
do you actually have a songbook? Can I go out and buy something from a music store and learn how to play Walcott?
One of our techs actually did put together a 3-ring binder with the lyrics for me, with all the songs, and I looked through it. I'm like,
a songbook.
I'm like, man,
it doesn't have the notes up the top, and
there might be something.
You gotta put that out.
There might be something you could get, but yeah, I'm really excited about the live side of things. The only thing with a live album is that knowing how insane Ariel and I got towards the end of this album, you don't want to know how many versions of Harmony Hall there are. It drove driving like people that we work with crazy. Like, what's different about this? Oh, it's so different. Oh God, I don't know. So that's the only thing, is that with a live thing, I'd probably want to get in there and like tweak it like crazy. I would just have to curb my natural studio rat impulses.
See, you can never truly be in Pearl Jam, even though you want to be in Pearl Jam. I want to be in Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam, they just put out, they do it that night. They put it out that night.
Oh yeah, no. If we played a show and somebody was like, okay, it's cool to put it. Well, who knows? Maybe once we get back on the road, I'll feel differently.
When is that?
The real touring starts in May, but actually, I think we just announced we're doing like 3 little shows in London, because we're gonna go over there to do some press and stuff. So that'll be fun. We haven't played in we played End of the Road Festival last year. We haven't played in London in years, and then we just got like a sick tour happening, playing Hollywood Bowl in October.
Outstanding.
And the reaction's been crazy. Like Red Rock sold out almost immediately.
So exciting. Who's gonna play with you at the bowl? You worked it out?
Oh, I'm so psyched about the bill at the bowl. This is an all-time bill, because for Hollywood Bowl and Madison Square Garden as my kind of 2 hometowns,
yeah,
I really want to have a special bill. So at Madison Square Garden, it's us, Angelique Kidjo,
yep,
who's a legendary singer, always been super supportive of Vampire Weekend. We've collaborated on all sorts of stuff. And then Despot. So it's like all friends and family.
Amazing.
We got rap. We got Angelique from Benin, African music, Vampire Weekend. And then in here, we got Richard Pictures, which is my Beats1 co-host, Jake, yep, Longstreth's Grateful Dead cover band, opening at the bowl, getting a nice tasty vibe, just setting things up right. And then we got Tanarwin.
Wow.
Who are just incredible. I don't have a personal relationship with them, but we had that middle slot open, and we trying to see who we could get. And we're like, we just want this to feel like a special bill.
That's inspired.
And somebody was like, I think Tanarwin, like somebody had talked to Tanarwin's crew, and I was like, oh, that's sick. And also love, it's like 3 different types of guitar music.
Would you do a Time Crisis on the stage at the bowl during the day? Just record a Time Crisis? I just think something like, it would be sick to do a Time Crisis in the bowl at like 1 p.m. before soundcheck kicks in.
I've always been, that could be cool. And I think also sometimes they let people like kind of hike in the bowl during the day.
Really?
Let a few hikers in just to set a vibe while we record a TC over there. That'd be tight.
I had all this TC related material, but who cares? I love that show. It's on, by the way, this is obsessive in my house, right? My son goes to sleep.
Oh, the whole family?
My son goes to sleep to it every single night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, like, it's like, I go in to check that he's asleep, and you're just like filling his brain with all this pro-Grateful Dead rhetoric and telling people that Steve Miller's a bad man. And I don't know how I feel about all that. You know what I mean?
Daddy, what did Steve Miller say about Jerry Garcia?
It's like that. In the morning, it's like that. It's like that. It's like you're in my house. It's crazy. I get in my car, my son's like, can you play Harmony Hall? I'm like, I can play Harmony Hall, but have we had enough Ezra for one day? You can never have enough Ezra.
Between Vampire Weekend and TC, we got hundreds of hours of content.
Ezra Koenig.
And I just want to say, Steve Miller, just apologize. Just apologize. All is forgiven. Apologize to Jerry's children.